Well, good afternoon, everybody. How is everybody doing today? We kind of changed our angle today. Had a new videographer in the studio this week we got to work with. It was his show. So Tracy was directing the director. So he came up with this scenario for our live. So it's fun having him in the studio today. Looking forward to working with him. Good kid, and I can call him a kid because he's younger than my son. Well, at any rate, how's everybody doing today? It's been busy around here. That one had one little curveball for me. Came in on Monday, getting ready to roll it off the lift. There's a little puddle about right there, so we had to go in and replace both the shift shaft seal as well as the countershaft sprocket. Countershaft sprocket seal, no problem. That shift shaft, that one challenged me. It's so thin, and it's made out of metal. So it was kind of a challenge to get it out of there. But that video will be live. I guess we'll have it live in a little bit. Tracy will finish that one up and get it sent out. So let's swing around and look at the questions that were sent in from this week or anything I may have missed last week. So let me switch up screens. Our friend Chris Rhodes, he had actually sent in on our new email address. And Hank, if you would drop that in there, because anybody else that needs to send me information, this is a great way to do it. It comes directly to Hank and myself and kind of pushes you to the front of the line, you know? So Chris has a question about his 04 Yamaha Raptor 660R. I noticed a very small drip combined with dirt clinging to the frame just under the water pump housing. It was in a perfect shape form of the weep hole. When I felt around the weep hole, there was a little bit of some residual oil, but nothing leaking. I've been checking and I haven't seen anything. Could oil be coming out of the weep hole? And if so, why? Yes, Chris, that is possible because, you know, there's a shaft that's coming through the engine that's driving the water pump itself. The end of that, or the inside of that shaft, there's going to be an oil seal to keep the oil in and the water from going in there as well. I'm a little bit surprised that you're not pumping water directly into your or oil directly into your water. I'm a little bit surprised it's finding its way straight to that weep hole. I almost would have expected it to be mixing with your water or your coolant. So you may want to take a look at that. At any rate, it's saying you need to do something, and that something is to replace that inner seal. Now, I did read your question before I came out here to go online, but I didn't look out the part number yet. But I'll tell you, you can do that. But if not, I can look it up for you and shoot it to you. Not a big deal. I've done that procedure before. It's not that tough, a little bit time consuming, and it's annoying that you have to drain all your fluid out just to change out your water pump seal, but it is doable. And we probably need to do that video because we've had that come up a couple of times in the question area. Dave for Honda, how do we reset the power steering light on a 2009 Honda Rancher? All the ball joints and wheel bearings have been replaced. Everything's tight, and I've been told there is a reset procedure. Yes, there is, and I'm going on some pretty old memory here, so forgive me if I'm wrong on a wire color or two. That DTS connector, that little, it's the connector near the battery, I believe, where they connect up the in Honda system where they can read codes on the machine. There is a brown and then a green wire. It's only a 4-conductor, and you need to jumper those together. But here's the other trick. You need to go up under the machine where the steering tie rods connect to the steering shaft itself, and there's a hole there. I think it's like either 4 or 6 millimeters, and you can see where you can put a pin straight up through it and lock it in place. All right, now at that point, with it locked, you turn the steering wheel all the way to the left, turn on the ignition. I mean, you hold it tight, and then it'll flash twice. The power steering light will flash twice. You turn it off, turn it back on, and at that point, you pull it straight, if I remember correctly, turn it off, turn it back on, then let it that blink twice, and then you go back to the left and do that one more time, off or on, and then back off. At that point, that should re-zero or reset the steering angle and the electronic motor itself. And granted, that's some pretty old information, so I had to replay it in my head a little bit, but I believe that's the gist of it. Oh, let's see. At Dan Johnson, thought he was going to be a Miami Vice fan here. 2008. I have an 07 Grizzly 700. Curious, so do we. We were talking about it a little while ago. Would the stock muffler be the best muffler to put back on it if you'd like to keep it quiet? Definitely. I do remember putting a muffler on a muffler, and this was for a Hunter, and I believe it was for a Polaris unit. He just wanted it just as quiet as he could be. But the short answer to your question is yes, the stock one's going to be just about as quiet as you're going to get it. Now, if you need to knock down the sound a little bit more, there are extensions where you've got the stock muffler and then another one like I was talking about to really get it quiet. But I want to warn you, the performance suffers. But a Hunter with a, I think it was a Polaris 800, he wasn't really concerned about getting to the deer stand quickly. He just wanted to get there quietly. So chances are that they probably make one for your unit as well to make it even quieter. Khalid Sham. Hi, I have a Kawasaki Vulcan 650S. I've been noticing squeaking noise while backing up. Any idea what to look for? Surprised that you're worried about that. I don't spend a lot of time going backwards on a motorcycle. But hey, if it bothers you, there's a couple of places you need to look. You didn't tell me if it was the front or the rear wheel, so I guess I'm just going to assume that it's the back. First place I would probably look would be the brake rotor itself. It may be squeaking a little bit on the way back. Not a lot you can do about that except to maybe clean up the rotor, maybe put on a new set of pads. If that's not it, then I would start looking at the chain guides themselves. Make sure that the chain is lubricated, especially at its roller points at the swing arm. And I think that's the only place on the 650S. Last but not least, could it be a wheel bearing that may be trying to tell you something that's is drying out and it's getting ready to fail? Could be the case. Lift it up, relax the suspension, and then just spin your wheel backwards and listen for it. That should tell you the story. If it's only doing it with the machine loaded, I would probably lean more toward it being a bearing at that point. So put her up in the air, spin it backwards, see what she does, and then just listen for it. Mayank Yadav. Hey, John, I have a Kawasaki Z900. I experienced a delay in throttle. The bike takes a second to respond to the throttle. This delay is more noticeable at higher gears. In your opinion, what could be the cause of this? Please help. All right, now I've read about this, and yours must be a 2020 model. So there's a couple of things that might be going on here. With that particular year, if it is indeed the 2020, there was part of the program that they had in the ECU. When you chop the throttle, it would really shut down the fuel to the point it would cause a lag when you put the throttle back on. And that could be coded out if you did an ECU reflash. A lot of people are able to pull that off. But before you do that, just make sure that you've got the cable slack adjusted perfectly on it, because it is really picky on that Z900 for whatever reason, especially on that 2020 year because of whatever smog type programming they had worked into the ECU. All right, Austin McClinney. The rear master cylinder on my 2010 Sportsman HO is bad. Since it needs to be removed and replaced, do I need to bleed the front as well as the back since they're connected? All right. On the on the Polaris, the way they've got the system mapped or piped is there's a line coming from the front all the way to the rear master cylinder, and then you've the rear caliper, and then you've got a line course from your rear master cylinder going back to the rear caliper. And I can't remember if they're on top of each other under the same banjo bolt or if they're two separate ones. But at any rate, certainly you're going to have to, of course, bleed the rear master all the way through, because that's just going to be nothing but a huge air pocket. It would behoove you to go ahead and do the front connection as well. I mean, let's face it, it's an 09, and I bet you haven't changed out the brake fluid ever, if you're like 95% of the people out there. So is it a big deal to bleed that? No, not really, not at all. I mean, you're going to be right at it anyway. But does it have to be bled all the way through? No, but it would do it justice to at least push out that fluid that's been trapped in the rear caliper for years and years and years, and has gone through hundreds, if not thousands, of heat cycles, because eventually it will break down as far as its effectiveness as brake fluid. All right, this Viscara 40. Hey guys, any idea why a 2005 YFZ 450 is not sending any power to the bike? I have a new battery. I've replaced the key switch, the starter solenoid, cleaned the neutral switch, and still nothing. I hit the switch and it doesn't do anything. All right, you've been replacing a bunch of parts, and no, you can't put the horse back in the barn. But I would have, before you started replacing parts, should have gotten out a test light and or a multimeter, because instead of just saying, all right, let's replace that solenoid and it's going to send power, well, how do you know if it's sending power or not if you didn't test it correctly? Buying a decent, I'm going to scold you a little bit here. Buying a decent test light and or multimeter is going to be a lifetime investment that you're going to use over and over again. And then it will take out the question of, all right, is that going to fix my machine or not? It's going to tell you, all right, I hit this button and either A, it's getting power to the starter, or B, it's not. And because from everything that you're telling me, who knows, it could be the starter at this point. But we won't know that until you test it. So go buy that test light. I'm pretty sure we sell them at Partzilla.com, and then write back to us and let me know, because that's another thing, guys. When you come to us with questions, I want to know if I'm right or wrong, because we're all in this together, and it is a learning curve. In my case, learning curve is like this, but I deal with what I play the hand that I've been dealt. All right, looks like we got one more from last week, and then we'll dive into whatever you may have for me this week. Ernie Foster, I put a new carburetor on my 2005 Honda Rancher 400, and it won't start. What should I do? All right, next thing. When you tell me it won't start, you need to give me a little bit more information. Are you saying that it's turning over and it won't start, or it's just dead in the water and won't do anything? All right, I'm going to go under the assumption that it's turning over, but it's not doing anything. All right, if that's the case, and you put a new carburetor on there, I've seen this happen before, new out of the box, and the float needle is stuck straight from the factory. Seen it happen before. So my first line of attack on this is open up your float bowl drain, see if fuel drains through it. If it does not, I bet you I'm right, and that float bowl is stuck and no fuel is getting into your carb. First place I'd look. All right, I think that's got us for last week. Let's see what we've got for this week. All right, Econ Recon, cool name. He's got a 2011 Polaris Ranger 800 that will idle but dies with throttle. Replace the plug wires, fuel pump, check the oil level, check the intake boot for an air leak. Good. Got a TPS sensor on the way. What else can you think of? Well, you were heading right toward it. So it sounds like you've zeroed in on that throttle position sensor, and I bet you that's going to be the problem. The older Ranger 800s, that was kind of a Polaris never really asked or addressed it, but that really came up a lot. It did. So with the TPS sensors, they had a bad run of them. So I would bet the TPS sensor will get it. But if it's not, then respond back to that our Ask Partzilla email, and I'll look a little bit deeper into it. Sound like a deal, Econ? Good. WK Zachary says, hello from Poland. Well, hello from the U.S., and thanks for joining us. What time is it over there? I guess I need to buy a globe where I could figure out or better estimate, what time zone people are in. Lauren's Garage says, thanks for all your helpful tips. Well, you are welcome. We don't mind doing this at all. Matter of fact, I've said it many times. I enjoy it. It's a fun way for me to wrap up the week, so to speak. Chris R. asks, how's it going, Chris? Thanks for the info on that one. Just one more to add to the off-season list. I've got 2 different aftermarket tie rods by 1 inch. Okay. What's the best way to cut the longer one down a 1/2 inch on each side? A hacksaw? And on the water pump seal, would you have to worry about an airlock in the system after I fill up fluids? Well, yeah, you're going to have to bleed it again, of course, from the beginning. Just draining half the system, you might as well drain it all the way and replace all the fluid. I'm betting you it's not the first time you've done that. Onto your tie rod, and yes, and when you do that, of course, you're not going to have enough threads. But I mean, I've done this trick before. Get a thread die of the same diameter and pitch of the threads you're working with, and just keep going on that tie rod a little bit further, so you've got enough adjustability in there. Shouldn't be a problem doing it that way. Let me know how it works out. One more. Got one from Red Arc. Pretty much is Red Arc 126, isn't it? I actually have a legitimate question this time around. The Yamaha XS650 parts are a little scarce. Most of the stuff I can fab together, since it'll be a custom bike, but like gaskets are specific. Are there some make-your-own gasket products you recommend? So if it ever goes back down in your truck, it won't leak everywhere. Yeah, there actually is, and I've had to do this before on a couple of Fiat parts, and you know a little bit about Fiats now, don't you? The real trick is you can get gasket material. It's no big deal. They sell it in sheets. I can't think of a manufacturer specifically, but I remember getting it from Napa. You can get gasket material sheets, and you just trace it out. If you've got anything left of your old gasket, that makes a great template. If not, just use whatever cover you're trying to make it for. Trace it from the outside, and then bring it on the inside, whatever thickness is of the mating surface. But that's really about it. Not that tough to find, but just make sure that the thickness isn't excessive, because you'll notice on any gasket, I mean, you could see them as little as a 1/10 of a millimeter and go where they're just paper thin, and I've seen it, almost up to a millimeter in thickness. Just be aware of that if there's any depth considerations that you're having to take into account, especially on something like let's say it's a clutch cover, and the clutch cover needs to be a specific distance because it actually has a control arm for the clutch throwout bearing or the push bearing. So just something to keep in mind as you're cutting that out. Plus the thinner stuff, you can get away with the thinner stuff, then it's a little bit easier to cut out. Well, all right, guys, I believe that's going to wrap it up for us today. So now I can close it down here, go home, and get to see my grandson this weekend. First time I've really gotten to spend some time with him, so I'm really looking forward to that. Well, on that happy note, I just want to say thank you to everyone that dropped by and wanted to spend a little time with us. Send me some good questions, especially the ones that got sent in during the week. Y'all made me work a little bit. I like that. Well, we do want to say thank you for spending some time here with us, and especially shopping here with us at Partzilla, because it makes all of this possible. And I like my job, So everybody have a great weekend, a great short week next week, get out there and play with your toys on July 4th. And after you've broken them effectively, give us a call on Monday, and we'll be glad to send you out the parts to get them back on the track, trail, or wherever you're going to head out. Well, once again, everybody, thanks for spending time with us, and we will catch you probably not next week. I may take off next Friday, but the one after that. That sounds like a deal? All right, y'all take care.